Hey guys, my name is Govind. I'm a real estate agent here in Austin, Texas. And if you guys watched my last video, you will know that I recently purchased a new construction home, which means that I am the first person to be living here, and gotta say, it's pretty great. But perhaps more interestingly is the fact that I do not pay the mortgage or utilities on this house, and I live here completely for free. That's right, I live completely for free. I do not pay the rent. I do not pay the rent, which I guess in this case would be the mortgage. I've always wanted to be completely financially independent, and this move definitely put me several steps in that direction. It didn't take a lot. Yes, I have a real estate background, but to be honest, it doesn't require a real estate background to do properly. I've helped countless other people and given them advice on how to structure their lives so that they can do something similar, and they all like it too. I mean, what's not to like? So I'm here to share this knowledge with the world and tell you that, yeah, you guys can do this too. It's definitely an option. It doesn't work for everybody, but I'm going to walk through the whole process with you guys and hopefully give you more of a cohesive answer on someone who not only knows the method, but has done it in practice themselves. So stay tuned for that. So how do I do this? Well, I use a method called house hacking. Now, if you look online, there's going to be tons of resources on Reddit especially, and on different internet forums about people who have done house hacking and they've done their own tweaks to them. And in fact, I've used these forums as indispensable resources for my own knowledge. But I feel like the whole process from start to end isn't really well explained, and it is helpful to have someone who's done it before walk you through the process. Like I said, the method I use is called house hacking, and all house hacking is a very simple premise. You buy a house, you rent out the rooms, and together with all the rooms that you've rented, it either covers your mortgage plus utilities, or it comes really darn close. I first learned about house hacking when I was on the receiving end of it. I used to work for an oil contractor in Houston, and I didn't want to open up a new lease. I just wanted to save up money to pay off student loans. I wanted something cheap. I was single. I didn't require the space. And to be honest, I just wanted something that worked. I looked online and I saw that someone was marketing a room, which I had never thought of, but a room in their apartment. And I was paying more than half of his rent, but it was still a good deal for me because that meant I didn't have to pay the full rent. It was really practical for me because it allowed me to save up money by not opening up a lease that was more expensive and also not living super far away because I wanted to save money. So I got the best of both worlds, plus it was just a very good fit. Ever since then, I always had the idea to do that for a house. It wasn't until I realized that house hacking was an actual strategy that I decided to apply it to my own life. But let's just jump right into my personal example because I think that's probably the most relevant for this video. So I live in a 5-bedroom, 3-bathroom house, and it is in East Austin. I'm not talking East Austin, the neighborhood. I'm talking East Austin, which is right next to the Tesla factory. I have 3 bedrooms upstairs and I rent all 3 of those out. I charge a monthly rent plus a monthly utility charge. And when I take all 3 of those rooms rent, it covers my mortgage plus some. And then the utilities, it covers all my utilities flat. So I don't make a profit on the utilities, but that's fine. I really wasn't looking to make a profit on the utilities. I just didn't care about that. Now, if you noticed and you did the math in your head, that means that there's 1 bedroom left, right? Because I live in the master bedroom and there's 3 bedrooms upstairs and I have a 5-bedroom, right? So that 5th bedroom is the guest bedroom that's also downstairs. That gives me a lot of flexibility. I can use that as a guest room if I have guests come over, or I could Airbnb that out, however I choose. If I was to rent that out full time, which I can and I might actually, I would be netting a decent profit while living for free, which it's pretty great, I'm not gonna lie. But now that you know the basic premise of it, let me walk you through more of the details because I think, the devil's always in the details and you wanna make sure you do this right. It does take a lot of planning and a lot of thought. So as you can see, the premise of house hacking is indeed very simple. The execution and the planning is what makes it more difficult than normally buying just a regular house. Because essentially at the end of the day, if you're looking to at the very least have your full mortgage and your utilities covered, you need to be playing a numbers game. What does that mean? That means that if you're living in the house, you need the number of other bedrooms times the rent you're going to charge per bedroom to cover your mortgage plus taxes plus insurance, and then the utilities are just going to be split. I have a lot of people I know who have purchased in Austin and they rent out some of the rooms and their houses are smaller, they have less bedrooms, so the total amount of the rooms times the rent is a little less than the mortgage, but it's pretty darn close. So what these guys end up paying is maybe $200 to $300 to live in a home that they're building equity in. That's still pretty good. But like I said, the planning and the execution are where most of the thought goes. Let's say you're trying to make a return on investment over the course of a year. Well, then your return on investment is going to be the difference between the mortgage plus all your maintenance and the amount that you're charging your tenants. Now, I have people go that route, and that's completely fine. They're very numbers oriented. They know exactly what they want, what they're looking for. And most of the time, when they fill something in on an Excel spreadsheet and it pops out a positive ROI, they're like, let's put an offer on that. And it works. But, for a lot of people, buying a house is more like buying a home and less like buying an investment property. And they want the best of both worlds, which is why they're okay paying a little bit of the mortgage as long as most of it's getting paid by their tenants. Usually the profile of people who do the first route are younger people who got their first good paying job, they want to purchase homes, and it's when you first get money, you want to make your money right now make you more money later, and I completely resonate with that. Either way, you can see that the premise of house hacking fits both of those narratives. The biggest concern I hear from people who are thinking about doing house hacking is, what if I don't find tenants? And I get it. It was the biggest concern of mine as well, because quite frankly, buying a house is a huge investment, and you don't want to be in a mortgage that you can't afford because you're not able to find tenants. And here's my tips for that. One is, never get into a mortgage loan that you would not be able to afford completely on your own. And I say this as if it was common sense, but like I said, buying a home can be an emotional process. And when you see a home that you love and it's just really tempting to just put that money down, I highly recommend against it. Here's why. Let's say, for example, you're paying $1,500 a month to live in an apartment, and you say, I could afford $1,800 a month. I got a promotion, maybe my spouse or my partner is doing well, and $1,800 a month seems okay. Well, that's fine if you go and get a mortgage that's $1,800 a month for a house. What's probably not okay is if you say, there's this great house that's $2,400, and yeah, we can afford it, but we're expecting to have tenants and they're going to afford it. Well, what happens if you, for whatever reason, don't find tenants? Now you're stuck in a $2,400 mortgage that you couldn't afford. And here's the thing. If you have a real estate agent, or if you have an honest real estate agent, they're going to tell you this up front. And if you have an honest mortgage banker, they're probably going to tell this to you as well. That, don't put yourself in a situation where you're taking on a mortgage or taking on what is essentially a loan, right? Because a mortgage is simply just a loan. Don't take a loan that you couldn't afford in the first place, banking on assumptions that everything else is going to fall into place. Because life happens. Things may not work out the way you want. Now, that being said, if you still push on and you say, no, you know what, I want that house, I want to get qualified for that mortgage, sure, your real estate agent and your mortgage banker are going to work to make sure that that happens for you. But it's still not a good idea. Just because it can be done doesn't mean it should be done. And the second tip I have for the main concern of what if I don't find tenants is, if you live in an area like Austin or Nashville or Seattle or San Francisco, or places where there's lots of people who are constantly looking for, residing, it's not going to be that difficult. Finding tenants is not the difficult part. Now, on the flip side, if you're in an area that isn't booming or doesn't have a huge influx of people constantly moving in or moving out, that's where a real estate agent can help, because they can help you pull rental comps. And in fact, you can pull rental comps too on apartments.com or Zillow. You can just go and look at it. And that brings me to my second biggest concern that I hear, which is, how do I price the rooms? Just take a look at what the market is offering. The way I price the rent on my rooms, I went to apartments.com and I looked up, how much does a one bedroom or a studio rent for in the area that I bought? And then I discounted it by 25%, and that was my rent. And I rounded it up to a nice number, but that was my rent, and it was just that simple. But the market is going to tell you what to price those rooms at. People aren't going to buy your room if it's more expensive than buying a studio apartment or a one bedroom apartment. It's just not going to happen. And the third concern I have is, how do you screen good tenants? Now, here's what I say. If it's your personal residence, and you're getting a primary residential loan for this house, you have to live in it. That's sort of the rule if they're giving you a mortgage for your primary residence. And because it's your primary residence, you can be as picky and choosy with the tenants. Now, that being said, it's probably best to not be discriminatory. But all I do is I run a background check, I ask for 2 pay stubs, I ask for ID, and then I look at a credit score report. And if everything checks out, that's fine. I have a little mini lease that I make them sign. It specifies the exact room in which they're in and the common spaces that they can occupy. I recommend meeting your tenants beforehand. After all, if you're buying a house and you're going to be living with them, in essence, they're your roommates. And you don't want to be living with people that you don't get along with. So I meet all of my tenants beforehand. I walk them through the process. I walk them very upfront through all my expectations. And I've turned applicants down before. Some of it's been due to the fact that, when I saw their pay stubs, I noticed that they didn't make 2.5 times the rent, which was my cutoff. Or their credit score was really low and had dips because they didn't pay rent on time before. Or, some of them had misdemeanors that I wasn't okay with having in my house. So you can be as picky and choosy as you want. It's going to be rare that you have all of your rooms and tenants filled on day one. That's what you're always striving for, but usually on move-in day, one person drops out or things happen or people get relocated, and that's fine. What's important is not to panic. And this brings me back to point one, which is, don't get yourself in a mortgage that you can't afford. And the reason is simple. If you put yourself in a situation that causes you to panic, you do not make smart, calm, and rational decisions. And I point to this example that I know of personally. I'm not going to name any names, but I know of a person who purchased a house and was doing house hacking. And they ran the numbers and they're like, wow, I could make a killing in this house if I rented all rooms except the one I'm going to live in. And that's true. I saw the numbers. They're great. However, it was a mortgage that he couldn't afford. But he went ahead with it anyway, despite advice against that. And what happened next is probably predictable and easily preventable. The first couple of months, he was really stretching thin and he wasn't able to find tenants. And finally, he just got fed up and said, you know what, the next three people that reach out to me, I'm just going to put them in rooms. I don't care. Because he got panicked. He was stretching his money. He was stretching his budget. And you can probably see where this is going. those tenants didn't respect the property. He didn't vet them very well. They had issues, and it was just a whole mess that, he's stuck with for a while now. And yeah, that was really unfortunate, and I feel for the guy, because had he made this work, it would have been phenomenal. But at the same time, it was a situation that he could have easily prevented just by thinking ahead and by planning that this is my budget for the mortgage. Or if I can't afford the mortgage, I have some money saved up, maybe 6 months of pure mortgage fund. So I have 6 months just to look. And you put yourself in a calmer situation, you get better tenants, and you're much happier. And I can personally attest to that. I like my tenants. I signed one of them on day one, sure. But the second tenant I signed a month later. And then the third tenant I signed a couple weeks after that, and I was not stressed at all. Actually, the most stressful part was sifting through the literally hundreds of requests on Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace and different Facebook groups for people who wanted my room, because, like I said, people want rooms that are cheap. Do things that your future self would thank you for. So that's really just the premise of house hacking. Plan, execute, get good advice. And that's really all there is to it. The premise is simple. It's all about the thorough planning and execution. I'm going to do another video later where I go through examples of house hacking so you can see the number breakdown. But this is just to really get that initial idea out there, maybe share some of the lessons that I've seen and that I've learned, and hopefully it helped you gain some perspective on house hacking. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Please consider subscribing. At minimum, I'm going to make a video a month, but to be honest, I like doing this, so I probably will do it much more frequently than that. My link and my info are in the bio, the description below. And as always, if you're looking to buy a house in Austin or sell a house in Austin, let me know. I would love to be your agent. That's all for today. As always, keep Austin weird.